And now it's time for another Dice Tower review with Mike Vincent.
So here we have a rather interesting enemy, and this is a crazed captive. Has the keyword captive, has an engagement cost of 13, so fairly low, with 2 threat, 1 attack, 3 defense, but only 1 hit point. This guy has doomed 1 and forced. If crazed captive is defeated, raise each player's threat by 7. So a really nasty effect, because when you first see this guy, you think, 1 hit point, not bad. He has 1 attack, so he's not really going to do any damage to you, but the problem is he's going to be annoying. He's going to engage you rather quickly because he has a low engagement cost, and he's just going to tie up one of your blockers, or you're going to have to take attacks undefended and risk getting some brutal shadow effects. So this guy you're just going to have to block over and over again. And a few words of caution. So as I mentioned, I was playing a direct damage deck, and I made the mistake of bringing Fallon, who does 1 damage to every enemy when it comes off the encounter deck. So I ended up killing this guy immediately, and both of our threats went up by 7. And there's 2 copies of this guy in this quest, so you really need to be careful, as jumping up 7 threat when you're not expecting it is a big problem. So other cards, like Expecting Mischief, could be a problem as well. Anything that does damage to an enemy when it comes off the encounter deck, though excellent in most quests, you can tell this guy was almost deliberately made to counter those types of effects. So I would not recommend bringing Fallon along for this quest because it's too unpredictable, as you will shoot up 7 threat. Now, some tips for this guy. So if he engages you, you could possibly throw a force snare on him just to tie him down, so you don't have to worry about him attacking you and being annoying. But yeah, so that's just going to take care of him. He'll engage you, throw this on him, and you can basically forget about him for the rest of the game. Now, a less reliable option would be Ranger Spikes. You know, you're going to have to get lucky with this one, but Ranger Spikes is going to negate his 2 threat, and he can comfortably sit in the staging area, and you're not really going to have to deal with him. The problem is, though, you're probably not going to want to kill him unless you've brought along some serious threat reduction, in addition to the other threat you'll be gaining in a quest. So a cool enemy thematically here, the Crazed Captive, and hopefully some of these cards will help you out. Okay, and the third enemy is the Torture Master. Has an engagement cost of 45, but 5 threat, 1 attack, 2 defense, and 4 hit points. It's a Dol Guldur and an orc, and has, when revealed, add 1 resource token to each Dol Guldur location in play. So we've already noted how those locations are brutal, and you really don't want to let resources pile up on them. So this guy just really synergizes in a nasty way with those 2 locations. Now, I've been sort of breezing over shadow effects, but this guy's is particularly gross. Any hero damaged but not defeated by this attack is turned face down as a prisoner. So this guy is potentially going to lock down some of your other heroes and turn them into prisoners. Then, if the players are on stage 3, return to stage 2B of the quest. So absolutely brutal. So you're going to want to bring some shadow cancellation as well. You do not want these going off, as they're absolutely nasty. Otherwise, I mean, he's not too hard to deal with combat-wise. He only has 1 attack and 2 defense. So again, if you have a Rivendell Blade, you're going to be able to kill this guy pretty easily. But he is going to be a nuisance in that he has 5 threat. So if he's sitting in the staging area, he's going to make questing very difficult. So this is a guy you're going to want to engage, and you're going to want to kill him as quickly as possible. So again, I think a Rivendell Blade would be a good choice, and doing 4 damage otherwise shouldn't be too bad. But really nasty shadow effect, and certainly potentially dangerous when revealed effect as well if you have those other locations in play. So now we'll be looking at our Treachery cards for this quest. Here we have Catacomb Inspection, has Surge. Never fun, Surge is always annoying, and when revealed, add 1 resource token to each Dol Guldur location in play. So this one is really going to depend on how many locations you have in the staging area at this point, or sorry, actually in play at this point, and how far along they are to ticking off, particularly the Torture Chamber, you potentially losing the game. So the Shadow Effect, if there is a Dol Guldur location in the staging area, move 1 resource token from each of your hero's resource pools to that location. Resolve this effect for each Dol Guldur location. So again, this could be a pretty devastating shadow effect, especially if Torture Chamber is in play. So again, I highly recommend bringing some shadow cancellation, because that's pretty gross. So you could cancel this one. although compared to the other Treachery cards, this one's maybe not so bad. But being able to deal with locations, again, Spirit and Lore are really going to come in handy for this quest. So I highly recommend looking at those. Okay, so our next Treachery card is Dark Interrogation, and it reads, when revealed, each player must choose and discard cards from hand until he has only 2 cards in hand. Each player with 2 or fewer cards in hand must instead reveal 1 card from the encounter deck. So this is pretty brutal, and this would be my vote for any cancel when revealed effects you will bring along with you on this one. I think this is pretty nasty, and will also make you consider when playing this game to very much beware of having less than 2 cards in your hand. Having to potentially have multiple players, have to draw that many extra encounter cards, could be the end of you. So you probably want to keep at least 2 player cards in your hand, and bringing some extra card draw is a good idea so that you can recover from this card if you aren't able to cancel it. So obviously being able to play with only a few cards is really going to hurt you for the rest of the game. So card draw is something to consider for this quest, and you may want to be very careful about having less than 2 cards. But I think this is a prime candidate to cancel with a Test of Will. Alright, and our last card for Treachery is Sentinel of Shadow. When revealed, the staging area gets plus X threat until the end of the phase, where X is twice the number of players in the game. If the players quest unsuccessfully this phase, put the Nazgul of Dol Guldur into play from any out-of-play area, engage with the first player. This cannot be cancelled. So I would say save your Test of Wills for this card, but unfortunately you aren't able to cancel this card. So this is brutal. You're going to have to deal with it. And again, the more players in the game, the more this is going to scale. So clearly the designers have decided that this quest is quite easy when you have lots of players, and so they've definitely taken a few steps to make this much more challenging, even if you're playing with more players. So there's not really much you can do about this one, unfortunately, in terms of preparation, as you're not allowed to cancel it, and you're just going to have to, unfortunately, deal with it. And it seems like every one of these Nightmare decks has one card that, unfortunately, no matter how well you prepare, you're sort of out of luck. So obviously having some defenders is a good idea. If you have Baragon, that's great. But if you're playing a support deck with lots of Spirit and Lore, then you may not have someone available for this kind of defense. So having some extra allies anyway is probably the best way to mitigate this. You're just probably going to have to chump block. So there you have the Sentinel of Shadow. Okay, so as a final tip, well, we've already established that Spirit and Lore are very handy in this quest, and I think Tactics is always good because you're always going to have some enemies, some pretty brutal ones in this case, and so probably those are the 3 main spheres you're going to want to dip into. Now, there is some potential, I think, for a Rohan deck to do fairly well. So Ride to Ruin has a cost of 1, so that lets you discard a Rohan ally to put 3 progress on a location. So that could certainly come in handy for those locations, which are going to get more powerful over time. Astonishing Speed, until the end of the phase, all Rohan characters get plus 2 willpower, so that's going to be really handy if you do get surprised with some extra threat, and you're going to want to be questing through those active locations, so that's going to be very handy. And of course Eowyn, just with her very high willpower and ability to discard cards to increase your questing ability that much more, I think is also a good consideration. So there you go, Spirits, some Lore, Rohan, some direct damage I think will come in handy, though you do want to avoid Thalon, and again, probably Legolas with a Rivendell Blade, as Legolas is going to be able to put progress on locations as well for killing things. So hopefully this video has helped you come up with some strategies for dealing with this quest. If you're playing solo, best of luck to you, as this quest is just so brutal, and I've never beaten this one solo. But even if you're playing with more players now, it's going to be more tricky, and I think this is a really good quest, and I love these Nightmare decks. For Season 1, if you have had a lot of power creep and you have all the expansions, this is a perfect way to go back and play through those first couple of quests, and suddenly they're going to be reinvigorated and more challenging. I was able to beat all the quests in Season 1, and for me, it was actually maybe less hard than I was expecting. Heirs of Numenor for me is still the hardest thing that I've played, but in this case, it was just really fun. It was a good level of challenge, and really, I appreciate them adding replay value to quests that you've already bought. So I very much recommend the first season of the Nightmare decks, and thanks very much for watching, and have fun if you decide to pick these up. Just a note, I am going to be very busy in the next couple months as I'm a teacher and we're heading into the end of school. So there's lots of stuff going on, graduation ceremonies, report cards, etc. So my video postings are going to be somewhat sporadic and irregular, but I will try and get some content up for you guys in the next 2 months. So thanks a lot for watching and have a great week.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at DicetowerNetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.